What's up? This is Isaac Hayes III, and you're watching Hip Hop Weekly.
Hi, I'm Crystal Ketchum with Hip Hop Weekly, and today I have some very special guests with me. I have Zell, I have Mimi and Shantae of Eyelash Vision, and Isaac Hayes III. So to start with, Isaac, we're going to go what you said on Twitter. So I'm going to read it out, and then I'm going to ask you to explain, and everybody just give me your thoughts on it. Okay? So on Twitter, you said, Atlanta needs its own pop culture, urban media. Atlanta cranks out the majority of the current urban culture, but has zero power media. No Breakfast Club, no Everyday Struggle, no Big Boys Neighborhood, no TMZ. LA and NYC control the conversation. ATL culture creates. Gotta change. Now, after you put that out, you got a lot of backlash.
Well, do you feel like it was backlash?
I didn't think. No, I got a lot of reaction.
Reaction. Okay.
There was some backlash.
So explain what you meant by that.
I've been an Atlanta resident since I was 3 years old. I moved here from, ironically, LA, from Memphis to LA to Atlanta. My father and my mom moved here, and she wanted to raise kids here.
Okay.
So I've seen Atlanta grow, and I've watched the culture of Atlanta and the South kind of take over the world. Mm-hmm. And so I recognize that Black culture is the African-American culture is the smallest culture group on planet Earth, right? Not African culture, but African-American culture. But we have the most influence. Mm-hmm. And most of that culture comes from Atlanta.
Amen.
So I say Black is the cool of the world. There's nothing cooler than a Black person. Exactly. It doesn't get cooler than
Black American person.
Right. So Atlanta was very fortunate to explode nationally in a time when the internet was focused on Atlanta music. Mm-hmm. So right around 2003, 2004, when Lil Jon and Jeezy and Tip and everybody was blowing up, that's when YouTube came along. And that's when everybody was stealing records off Napster. Mm-hmm. And so Atlanta culture went viral. Mm-hmm. And so we were just fortunate enough to be the culture that was on top at the time. So it influenced all these generations of kids that are making the Metro Boomers, the 21 Savages, the Pumps, everybody, all the records. DJ Mustard, he was a huge Lil Jon fan. He said Lil Jon's my favorite producer. So I recognize that most of the culture that we create is from here. Mm-hmm. Media is really New York and LA. They mm-hmm. control media. Mm-hmm. They have all the TV stations, all the radio stations, all the money to spend to create content. So they control the conversation. So in a sense, we always talk about how African-American culture is appropriated by other races. Mm-hmm. Atlanta culture is appropriated by New York and LA. Mm-hmm. So they take what we do and then make it main stage, but really there's no infrastructure in our city. So what I mean by that is, let's focus on the African American population. The majority of Black people in this country just live in the South. Mm-hmm. Georgia has the largest population of Black people in the country, like 3.1 million African American people. Mm-hmm. So we have an African American mayor. Mm-hmm. We potentially will have an African American governor in the fall. Out of the 6 highest rated TV shows on television, 4 of them are Atlanta based and film shows.
Very true.
Meaning, Have and Have Nots, mm-hmm. Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, mm-hmm. Real Housewives of Atlanta, and Star. Mm-hmm. Those are out of 6.
And those are the major network.
And those are major network shows. Right. And we're not even talking about
Atlanta.
We're not talking about Atlanta.
Which won the Emmy last year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So for me, the simplest question is, if that is all that is the case, then why isn't BET located in Atlanta? Right?
It's not headquartered.
Why is BET not headquartered? All the culture comes from here. Mm-hmm. All the people live here. And you're already down here filming all your content anyway. Mm-hmm. So why isn't Essence down? Is Essence Magazine here? Exactly. Why is Ebony not here? Why is Jet not here? Why is TV One not here? Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you merge media in one place that we control. Mm-hmm. Now, I totally understand why. It's because 2 things, and I don't want to dominate the conversation if you guys want to chime in, but 2 things that I know that are really big problems. And I don't know where everybody's from. Where are you guys from?
New York.
So New York. Everybody in New York.
Carolina. I'm from New York. Exactly. I'm from North Carolina.
All right. So if you don't live in Atlanta, Georgia, or maybe Detroit, and maybe DC,
Mm-hmm.
you grow up in this country with something I call a minority mindset.
Yep.
And when I say that, people sometimes get offended. And what I mean by that is you grow up understanding that there's white, dominant culture,
Mm-hmm.
the majority, and then you're second. In Atlanta, Georgia, I never grew up that way.
Mm-hmm.
I've always known a black mayor. I've always known successful African-American people, so I never felt second to anyone. We were the majority population of the city. So there is no limit to what I felt I could achieve as a black person in this city. And I always say, like, Martin Luther King would have, if Martin Luther King never would have been MLK, it would have been somebody else, but they still would have been from Atlanta. Because Martin went to Washington High School, he went to Morehouse College,
Yep.
he went to Ebenezer Baptist Church. He grew up in a middle-class lifestyle.
Okay.
So when they saw him, he was articulate, educated, confident, not easily shaken. He was the type of person that could deal with racism in a way, and that's what Atlanta creates. Those are the type of people that Atlanta makes.
Right.
We're not afraid of nobody.
That's absolutely true.
With that being said, we have all these influential people. What is it going to take, y'all can touch on this, for Essence to come down here? For big companies to finally move down here and say, this is it. Atlanta is where it's at. Why is that not happening? Why do you think that?
Well, I look at it as if they know where it's at. They know what's happening here in Atlanta. Atlanta is really, really that takeover place when it comes down to entertainment. The media should be here. They should all be here. The reason being is because, as he said, Atlanta is creating it.
Right.
So why aren't they controlling the media here?
I think what needs to happen in regards to media is what happened regarding music and movies and those areas where Atlanta has been the staple where music is.
Right.
We basically run music in New York. Everything that's coming out of New York right now sounds like Atlanta.
Exactly.
We have to create media in a way that is unique from what everybody else is doing. So we can't. I like to say that I remember my favorite right now is Complex. I love what Complex is doing, but Complex is owned by Verizon. You know what I mean? So it's not something that's being done organically. It's basically a bunch of guys in a boardroom that's saying, "Hey, what they doing down in Atlanta?" And they basically, because if you look at all of the shows that Complex have put on YouTube, they all start with an episode in Atlanta. Like
Right.
with the Noriega show and
Right.
what's that? At First We Feast show. You know what I'm saying? All these shows they come down here, take the content, and then they put it on their shows, and then they'll roll it out into other markets, like they'll roll into the New York market or into a St. Louis or something like that. But it always starts with Atlanta. If you go back and look at those shows and how they start out, so what we have to do is create a format here in Atlanta that would actually that's completely different of what Essence is doing. What are some of the other Evan? I mean, like we just have to create our own. I hate to say complex, but we have to create our own formats that basically do something similar to what Complex is doing. And we.
But what would that look like?
That would,
To me, like how they do the Revolt conference in Miami, something like that is major, with so many different brands attached to it. That needs to be implemented here in Atlanta. That would be a great start for the media, because I feel the same way as Isaac do, that it's not enough recognition, it's not enough acknowledgement with what we do with artists, entertainers, Pine Lawn Studios, Pinewood, everything now is here. So why isn't a major
But they
brand?
think that we have enough here.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You don't have it all. You guys have it on the film side. You have it on the tax
music.
credit for the film. You have it on the music side. So you don't need everything else. We'll keep this over here and we'll keep that over there.
It's disenfranchisement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it happened in Atlanta, and I think as great as when L.A. Reid took over Arista Records, it crippled Atlanta in a sense. It cut Atlanta. They took the hat off Atlanta. L.A. was a leader.
Yeah.
when he came
And
to
he knew how
Atlanta,
to,
exactly.
and he knew
all
he
of
knew
those.
how to get all these talented people to work together and facilitate all that talent and create all these great opportunities.
Mhm.
And so, as well as it did for him in the culture, it really took Atlanta's legs out from under itself, and it wasn't his fault. It's just nobody ever stepped up to fill that gap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll go back to I don't necessarily agree with what you said. I think honestly what needs to happen is every single one of those heads of those corporations needs to come to Atlanta at the same time and weekend and talk to the city and the state and figure out what we can do to get them to move to Atlanta. It needs to.
So you would want to see a complex?
No, I want to see BET be in Atlanta. Like the Revolt Music Conference should be in Atlanta.
Yeah.
The BET Awards should be in Atlanta. Essence Music Festival should be in Atlanta. There's no reason not to do that and center that. So if I go back to like my whole minority mindset conversation, we're separated in this country intentionally, right? Mm-hmm. We're not the United States of America. We're the divided states.
Yes, I agree.
And so, and we're done. We're marketed and promoted that way so that we don't join, right? I tend to get a little deep, but I say this like after the Civil War, they didn't want a whole bunch of states getting together and be like, you know what, we don't want to be part of y'all. Mm-hmm. So within these states, we'll create governors, and in those states, those cities will have mayors, and in those mayors, they'll have council members in neighborhoods, and so everybody's fixed into their neighborhood to the point that one neighborhood in the city will beef with another neighborhood, right? Then one side of town will be against the other side of town, and one city won't mess with another city in the same state, and one state will say F the other state, then one region will say F the region, and then one coast will say F the other coast. Mm-hmm. So when you're in Atlanta and you're from New York City and you're like, oh man, the Knicks or whatever, F the Hawks.
Good point.
Right? So Spike Lee, even though he went to Morehouse, he's a diehard New York fan. Yes, and people that are in LA are diehard LA fans, and they're so fixed into the fact that even though you're from LA, recognize that you're black first. Right. And so the common sense move would be to pool all your resources and money into one place where black people are, and then work together. Right?
Correct.
So when the Clippers were up for sale, when Donald Sterling did all the crazy shit he did, and I remember they're for sale, Oprah was one of the people that was interested in buying the Clippers. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, the Hawks are for sale at the same time. Mm-hmm. Why didn't Oprah want to buy the Hawks? Mm-hmm. It's a majority black city. Mm-hmm. You're a black woman. You buy that team, the seats are filled immediately with African American women who are like in awe that this woman has bought a major basketball a black female sports owner. Mm-hmm. The sidelines are filled with all the celebrities: Tyler Perry, Kevin Hart, Will Smith, everybody that you ever think of. Exactly. And now people want to come play for this team, and now you have people coming to the stadium. Coming to the arena, and you built that kind of fan base in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. It galvanized. That's why I was so upset that the Falcons lost the Super Bowl, because that was the first a lot of transplants into Atlanta.
A fan.
I'm no longer with the. We won. The Falcons won the Super Bowl. I live in Atlanta. I'm a Falcons fan.
It bothers me too. That's one of the things that bothers me when I run into a transplant, and they say, well, I'm a Giants fan. I was like, well, Atlanta can't be your second favorite team because you live here. You know what I mean? You gotta pull, like we have to stick together. And I hate it when we go to a football game in the city. It's more people from out of town rooting for the out of town team than it is our team. So we have to, like you said, that would have made a huge difference if we were able to win a Super Bowl, because that was the first time I saw people who were Steelers fans actually pulling for the Falcons. Yeah.
It changes the mindset. And so infrastructure is really what the issue is, because Atlanta does what it does with no help. So you give it. So Atlanta's, like I say, Atlanta is this enormous this enormous pool of oil, but there's no well on top of it. The wells are in New York and LA. If you put a well here, there's nothing that stops that. So,
and to touch on with something Zell said earlier, he said you said a prominent figure in Atlanta has said this: the reason why we won't get that well because people believe the talent isn't here.
No, that's okay.
Now, how do y'all feel about that? The talent isn't in Atlanta. Like I look at DC Young Fly. That's not talent.
That's a piece of it, right? So let's go way up the food chain, right?
Right.
So look at Tyler Perry and Will Packer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, let's speak about this real quick. And I know this is very popular to say, right? But I think that in this country, we've gotten so used to fighting these discriminatory battles, an oppressive mindset. When I think about Spike Lee and the battles that he's had to fight his entire career through the TV and film industry, they're battles that he would have never had to fight in Atlanta.
Right.
Because Tyler Perry's like, all right, well, I'm going to create culture and content for my people. Albeit people might not like what Tyler creates, but he creates a product that identifies directly to his audience, and he's successful at it. And so for me, I think when, in my mind, when Spike Lee makes a movie, he has to raise funding for his movie. He has to go get money to help produce the film, right? But when Tyler Perry makes a movie, he just writes a check and makes his movie.
Right.
And so therefore, Hollywood is a lot more afraid or respects Tyler Perry in a way that you don't need us at all.
Exactly. He got his own studio.
Right.
Exactly. So when you pull that away, there's nothing that they can do except get a piece of what you create.
Right.
So that's what I mean by they're afraid of putting infrastructure here. So in the music industry, like there's been no brick and mortar labels here since LaFace.
Yeah.
The only other label that participates in Atlanta, Georgia, to a level that gives it any kind of opportunities, Atlantic Records.
Yeah.
And those are my guys, Drama Cannon, over there, Mean Streets.
Yeah. And you have to understand, too, that a lot of these other, like QC and whatnot, those are boutiques that aren't necessarily, I mean, they do have an independent feel to them, but they are kind of pushed and distributed by these bigger labels. So we don't have like you said,
they're very unique. They have an excellent deal. Coach deal is excellent. I think that they own masters and all kind of that.
Yes.
But also the difference was back in the day, and that's just because we messed the money up in the music industry. People didn't really handle the budget the way they did.
Correct.
But it was times where labels, and now there's no excuse with how much money streaming is making, but they were giving $25, $35 million label deals, $40 million deals. Like, here's $40 million.
Right.
You owe us a certain amount.
Our imprint goes here.
Right.
You get half. Do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of more. It's almost like they siphon it out. Well, we'll put this project out, and it's more along the lines that they don't let people just run with the ball. There's a fear of domination by this culture. There's also a desire to maintain and control the conversation. And so I've always been the kid that's watched the culture bounce back and forth between New York and LA my entire life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So growing up, if you're black, we love New Jack City. We love Boys in the Hood. We love Do the Right Thing.
Society.
We love Men's Society.
Right.
But you're telling stories that only particular segments of the country understand. That's why I say New York and LA live on these like castles. They live in these high castles that they don't recognize that the rest of the country is not like you.
Right.
The rest of the country, New York is what Philly to Maine is.
Right.
LA is what Washington State down to New Mexico is. From the Rocky Mountains to the Mississippi River, the majority of that culture, especially with African Americans, is Atlanta, Georgia. In that culture, we do the same thing. We ride Chevys. We like trap music, smoke weed, chicken. Like it's a street element. It's a street element that is just more common.
Right.
So someone from Memphis or St. Louis or Houston or Tallahassee or Tampa are more like someone from Atlanta than they'll ever be from New York or LA. And so that's the pool that Medea speaks to. Or that's who Migos talk to.
Right.
That's what inspired Metro Boomin to come from St. Louis and then
to Atlanta.
To Atlanta,
in Atlanta. So that's it. So that's the audience that is not even being tapped and spoken to. That is way more popular. Like a show like Atlanta, that's extremely successful.
Yes.
So that's where we have to really get back to demanding. At the end of the day, having those conversations. And I know those people, and I know by my post, those people have gotten that post, and they are aware of it, and they've confirmed and agree. So I know that Mona Scott has heard this. I know that Diddy has heard this. I know that the executives at BET have heard this. I know all these, so they know it. So now it's kind of like, you don't want people, you kind of want people to ask them, and you're like, well, yeah, why aren't y'all in Atlanta?
Right.
And anything other than there is no excuse not to be here is you're hating. At the end of the day.
And we're one of the most influential cities that everyone wants to come to Atlanta to party. It's like the party capital
Mm-hmm.
now. when it
Every
comes
time you
to-
turn around, you hear somebody else is moving to Atlanta.
Mhm.
They're not moving to Atlanta. People are leaving their everyday jobs to come to
pursue-
Atlanta to pursue a dream because they see, oh wow, well they have the major factors here in the film industry. They have what we need for the music industry. They may not have the major labels that are like in New York and LA, but somehow they put it together and they make it work. So everybody's migrating here.
Yeah.
Like literally from the time I've been here close to 10 years now, and in my time of being here, just out of friends and family alone, I've heard at least about 400 conversations, and maybe about 299 of them moved here. You know, because everybody wants to come here because they want a piece of
They
it.
want to. They know that this pie is here.
Okay. Here's a hard pill to swallow. I think with some facets of our media, we also have to start to hand off this to the kids, to the youth.
That's what I was thinking
Yes.
of.
Yes.
too.
There's I think there's a little bit of there's a little bit of like, all right, it's time to let some
Hanging
new
on.
faces,
Yes.
some new faces and some new voices be heard.
Say it.
Because they keep the same faces
Say it.
reigning for a very long time.
Say
And
it.
it becomes repetitious because they're doing some of the same things and they're not letting anybody in.
So Funkmaster Flex can get interviews with Jay-Z and 50 Cent and Irv Gotti.
Mm-hmm.
He can get those really good interviews. The reason he gets those interviews is at the time those guys were coming up, he was the young DJ in the clubs and on the radio. So he rolls with them into a position, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at this point now, you take a DJ like DJ Esco, right? Okay, who broke Future's records in Magic City. But if you gave him an opportunity on radio, Future's coming to the radio station. Drake is coming to the radio station.
Correct.
Exactly.
Migos is coming to the
The
radio
whole three
station.
bands is coming to the radio station.
Right, they're
Yeah.
coming. You'll get those interviews because that's the relationship that exists. Because I helped break you guys.
Right.
You guys have new records. So those conversations have to get had in those buildings to start to give new people new opportunities to start to put young faces and young energy on radio. So there definitely also needs to be a transition of what we're doing. And we do have a Southern hospitality down here that we tend not to ask the tough questions.
Right.
We tend not to ask
Yes.
about. We tend not to ask about your baby mama,
Right.
or when you got arrested, or like why you ain't paying your taxes. Or that other people that Charlemagne will ask.
Yes.
Big
That's
Boy
true.
will ask.
Yes. Directly.
But you also have to demand that level of respect. Like I kind of criticized everybody that got on a plane and went to Wyoming to hear Kanye West album because everybody. This is my point is. A year before that, a year and a half prior to that, Kanye went on an entire rant for the life of Pablo
Yes.
and was like, F radio.
Right. Yes.
Just like F radio.
Yeah.
F radio, lied to you, F radio, right? And he drops his album, and not only does he not ever really apologize, you don't make him come see you. You don't make Kanye come to your radio station and explain himself. You go to Wyoming.
Right.
And then on top of that, out of that whole situation, Charlemagne was there. He got an interview. Big Boy was there. He got an interview. Did Greg Street get an interview?
Right.
No. He didn't get an interview. You know what I'm saying? So, Side of Prince and Greg Street are like this, and he's with Kanye. And you can't sit down and give Greg Street an exclusive for V103.
Come on.
So we have to also start demanding that from those artists as well. Like, yo, you got to come. Like, we break these records down here, so you got to come see us. But if not, I'm not getting on a plane.
That's
to come
true.
to the album. I don't care.
In the middle of Wyoming.
Wyoming.
Like,
Yeah.
But it's like, imagine if Greg Street didn't go down there. You're not a part of the conversation anymore. So I see why he went. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, he had to go, honestly.
He didn't. For what?
No.
What did
he accomplish?
What did he accomplish by going to Wyoming? Except he got to take a picture. He took some photos and said, I was there. It's
But
over.
he didn't get the interview.
He was supposed to be granted an interview. This is a man that's been in radio for years and helped a lot of people's career. He's here in Atlanta and is a part of major media here. Why wasn't he granted an interview? There's no reason he shouldn't have gotten it. And I'm back to what you said as far as the demand. That's the thing about New Yorkers, I have to say, moving here. Because a lot of people are, they're a lot smooth around the edges. They ask for what they want gently. New Yorkers are people that demand what they want.
I like to give that, when I mentioned the Breakfast Club, I like to give those particular set of guys their respect because it's not easy being them.
Right.
They're the exception and not the rule.
Right.
Because it's hard to sit 3 feet away from somebody and be like, your album is trash. You know what I'm saying? Charlamagne is a one of a kind type of person. There's not a lot of people don't have the guts
to do that. You gotta also
look at controversy sells, and so when that happens, those are the conversations that people want to have. They want to have those honest conversations. They don't want to come down there and say like, all right, don't snowball me, don't interview. That's not what we're here to talk about. That he'll ask you like, yo, so look, are you sleeping with so and so?
Yeah, because
did you do this or what?
Like we're Fredro,
right?
Yeah,
right. And that's what it is. Those are the conversations that you have to have, and that's being a journalist.
I mean, like if you, that's what journalism is. Like just just ask a question.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what the response is. Like one of the things that Charlamagne says is like you can't control what somebody's response to your action is. So you might as well go ahead and ask the question. Like
radio is predicated on sound bites.
Yeah.
It's built on,
if you notice that.
Yeah.
So if they are who they are, Birdman doesn't come up there and from that whole, just Birdman was literally there for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But out of that whole thing,
it was like 8 minutes.
We got respect on my name.
Yeah.
T-shirts. All 3 of y'all. Like, we got the arm folded me. So it's just that one piece.
It's like 7.
Just from that, it creates. That's why you have to have those moments when it's like, when Monique is on Sway in the Morning and she says, humbly, I'm the most decorated comedian alive. I know he's sitting next to her and conducting the interview, but in his mind, I'm like, oh my God,
this is about to go crazy.
That's going to go viral.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so that's what you have to do in media. If you're not standing up to people and creating those moments where people have to have tough dialogue, it never does anything.
Right.
You know, that's why my post was not a softball post. It was like, yo, we ain't got no black media down here. We need it.
That's true.
And
it polarized people
one direction or the other, so it creates that conversation.